Thank you all for coming. My name is Nancy Hoffman, and my voter is Amy from Stoppelmeyer. I'm going to say that way Back in January, Amy and I went on a University of Michigan alumni trip to Egypt, and we met Hisham. We went on several different places in Egypt, and really were so influenced with the whole thing. We thought maybe it would be nice to share him with you, and so we invited him. He said yes, and he's going to be giving 5 lectures, so you will be, this is your first adventure into antiquities out of 5. We end on Monday. If you're not sure about what the schedule is, on that. But anyway, I want to introduce you to Hisham. Hisham is Hisham El.meniawy. Is from Cairo, Egypt. He is a native of Egypt, and a native of Cairo. He was educated at the University of Cairo, and his specialties are history and Egyptology and antiquities. And we're very happy to have him here to share this with you. And afterwards, we'll set up out there for a reception if you'd like to visit with him or share some things between you in relation to that. He has, are you coming in? Oh, sure, right. In and out at the same time. So I would like to introduce him, and Hisham. Sorry? Oh yeah, if you have any questions during the lectures, please hold those until the end. We'll take time to answer for you. Good, enjoy.
Right, good evening everybody. It's an honor actually to be among you today. I know that I came from quite far away. And when I was invited by Amy and Nancy to come over here and to give some lectures, I do this actually for the last 6 years in England, and it was my first time actually to come to the States to lecture here. So it was a great honor, and I thought it would be a great chance to let you know about my country a little bit, and maybe share the knowledge with you. And I hope that you'll enjoy it. So we're going to talk about different subjects, and definitely we cannot cover lots of things, but we'll try to get some bits and pieces from here and there, and hopefully it will be quite informative. So as Nancy mentioned, I'm from Cairo, and I've studied Egyptology for many years, and I've been doing this job for more than 21 years now, and I really love it, I really enjoy it, and I hope that I can do something for my country when I share the knowledge with all of you. Our today's session is a very important session, and especially because of the place where we are now. So I thought about having the first lecture to be art in ancient Egypt, as we are in the Art Association. So maybe you can have an idea about art in this part of the world, which is also an ancient type of art. Art, as we know, is one of the very early ways of expressing people's feelings, and started like maybe 20,000 BC in Egypt, even before the known civilization. Just very briefly, before I talk about art, I just would like to give you a brief idea about ancient Egypt. When we talk about the history of ancient Egypt, so we are referring back to almost 5,000 BC, and that is actually the known history. It doesn't mean that before there was no other civilization. No, We had civilization before that in Egypt. We had different parts of Egypt were very civilized and they had their own collection of art, but matter of fact, there was no language to describe their history or their work or anything. So we found remains of tombs and little villages and some potteries here and there, but we don't know much about it. We say that the civilization really started about 5000 BC, when Egypt was divided into two countries, one in the north and would be known as the Kingdom of Lower Egypt, the other one in the south, the Kingdom of Upper Egypt. And you have to understand that I know that I learned this the last couple of days, that you have a very famous river here called the Snake River, and we do have, of course, the famous Nile, and the Nile was a very important element for building the civilization. Even the Greek historians and their master, the father of history, Herodotus, mentioned when he visited Egypt that Egypt is the gift of the Nile. I agree and disagree with him, because I mean, you could have the river Nile, you could have the source of water, but you don't have the manpower to create this beautiful civilization. So Egypt was the gift of the Nile, as well as the Egyptians who built the civilization. So everything would be related to the river Nile. Civilization related to the river Nile, art related to the river Nile, politics and everything. So when they divided the country into two, the north and the south, it's because of the Nile. We call it Upper and Lower Egypt because the Nile is running from south to north. So the land of the south is upper than the land of the north. Yeah, so this is how it works. It's maybe the other way around in the rest of the world, but it goes the wrong way, the river Nile, because it runs from Lake Victoria, which is one of the main sources of the river Nile in Central Africa, Uganda and Tanzania, and running all the way down to the Mediterranean. So Egypt is one of 9 African countries by the river Nile. Yeah, so the Nile is like 4,100 miles, and it's like only like 900 miles in Egypt, which is the last portion of the river Nile. Civilization established by the river Nile, and they started expressing themselves by carving on the walls of the caves and trying to form some figures, as we are going to see. This is just a picture from one of the tombs in the Valley of the Kings. See how beautiful and vivid colors. Some of you have been to Egypt, you've been to Luxor, and you've seen definitely the Valley of the Kings, which is one of the most famous sites. Here we can see carvings in some of the caves, and I think from my study I noticed that the cave carvings actually was very much similar in different parts of the world, not just in Egypt. Started more or less at the same time. We talk about like 20,000 to 10,000 BC, what we see here, and you notice that they try to express themselves by having figures of animals and humans. Look at the way they were painting and carving human beings. Very primitive. It looks very much like children's drawing. And here we can see another picture. And then we move to something very important, which is the comparison between, maybe you've heard of the hieroglyphics, which is the language was used in ancient Egypt, and it is the language which was on the Rosetta Stone. The Rosetta Stone was the first element used in cracking the code of the hieroglyphs. Well, actually they tried to crack the code maybe 3 centuries before they found the Rosetta Stone, which was found by the French, came to Egypt with Napoleon, and they worked on it. Actually the clue was that on the Rosetta Stone were 3 sections, like 3 different drawings or 3 different languages, but actually the top one was the hieroglyphics, the middle one was the Demotic, which is a simplified version of hieroglyphics, and the bottom one was Greek. So they worked on comparing the hieroglyphic section to the Greek section, and from there we started cracking the code by Jean-François Champollion in 1822, which is the year we started having the science known Egyptology. Before it was archaeology, but since the decipherment of the hieroglyphics from the Rosetta Stone, we have what is called Egyptology, which is archaeology in Egypt. You can see the similarity now between the cave carvings and the hieroglyphics. The language, when it was established, it had 26 letters, and the letters were mainly like animal figures, birds, and members of the human bodies, like the hand, like a mouth, like a head, like a leg, teeth, and so on. So see how similar and how the language was developed. The first construction of the language was almost about 3000 BC, like 5000 years ago. 3000 BC, they started using the hieroglyphics in giving description and explanation of what happens in their daily life, what will happen to them in the afterlife or life after death. Here we come to a very important fact about ancient Egypt, that sometimes people, when they look at their art, when they visit the different sites, they think that the Egyptians were very boring because they were always talking about death or life after death. So they didn't really care about this life. It's not that case actually. It was the other way around. The ancient Egyptians loved life, and they had everything they wanted. They had the fertile land by the banks of the river Nile, they had the current water, they had food, they had animals, they had birds, and wonderful weather almost the year round. But one true fact of life was death, and they knew that sooner or later they will die and their life will come to an end. Then they asked the question, what happens when we die? Will we leave everything and that's it? We're not coming back? The answer to the question, no, we are coming back for the afterlife, and the afterlife or the second life will be eternal. So if there is an end to the first life, will be no end to the afterlife, and it will last forever, either in heaven or in hell, according to what they've done in the first life. So we need to understand, because that will affect definitely art in ancient Egypt, as we see in the coming slides. It will put a strong influence on the way they carved their statues, and the way they made their coffins, and the way they built and decorated their tombs. It's not like the Greek civilization, which was very different from the Egyptian civilization, although that the Egyptian civilization was strongly influenced by the Greeks when they came to Egypt about 300 BC, the time of Alexander the Great, and the Greeks were influenced by the Egyptians the other way around. So this is when we talk about the second life, we have to understand that they focused a lot about the second life. They didn't care much about this life. What they cared about concerning this life was to be good enough so they can go to heaven in the afterlife. They will have what is called the judgment day. I will show a picture of the judgment scene, weighing the hearts to find out if they were good or bad. They explain this, that if the heart is heavy, so it means that the heart is full of sins, and that's why the heart is heavy. So he was not a good guy, he would be thrown in hell. If the heart is light, he's got a light heart, equal to the feather of justice, or even lighter than the feather of justice, so it means that he was a good guy and he deserves to go to heaven, and it will be eternal either in heaven or in hell. That's why when you go around and visit Egypt, you don't see many houses or even palaces of the pharaohs, and you wonder, guys, where someone like Ramses II has lived, why don't we see his palace? Because they didn't care much about this life. They knew that it will vanish sooner or later. They focused on the afterlife. So building temples and tombs, even the materials they use for construction, it varies from building houses to building tombs or temples. The temples were what we call the houses of the gods, and the tombs were the houses of eternity. So they had to last. They were built to last forever. This is why we have tombs everywhere, we have temples everywhere. I always say a joke about it, that I'm taking you every day to ABT, another bloody temple or another bloody tomb. This is actually what you can see when you get to Egypt. We don't have palaces in Egypt left, except one palace, actually, to be quite honest, which is very ruined. Only part of the floor survived, and it is displayed in the Egyptian Museum, and the palace belongs to the famous Queen Nefertiti. Have you heard the name before? Yeah. So here we can see also again something learned from the cavemen. We can see that the carving here showing form of a human body and like a coffin laying down in the tomb, and you can see that the comparison. This is from the Valley of the Kings, which is much later period, but they still have the same sort of bathroom, as you can see, the same sort of coffin shape. It was very important, the identity of the person for the afterlife. You know, I've just tried to give you a very simple example. When you travel abroad, you need your passport. What you mainly have on your passport? You have your name and you have your photo. So very important to check. You don't have a full photo of yourself, just have face photo. Yeah. So this is for the identification of the person and reading the name. So it was the same thing in ancient Egypt. To exist in the afterlife, to get to the afterlife, you have to be recognized, yeah, by your soul, your spirit in the afterlife. So the person is buried in a tomb, and they were not sure about the mummy, the body would last for a long time or not. They were expecting coming back, could be in 10,000, 20,000 years time, nobody knows. So they had to be sure. So they made large number of statues to ensure that the statues will help and guide the soul into the afterlife. They made lots of carvings on the walls. Yeah? They tried to use very strong, tough material for making the statues. So they used granite, as we'll come to talk about granite in a minute, which is found in Aswan. But one of the weakest parts of the statues were the necks and the heads. So they realized that many of the statues they made for the king for the afterlife lost their heads, and this is a disaster, because if anything is lost, like an arm is missing or a leg is broken or something like this, when he comes back to the afterlife, he can still come back to the afterlife, but with a missing arm, with a missing leg. The problem is, if the head is missing, so it cannot be recognized. So to solve this problem, they had what we call the reserve heads. So beside the statues, they had extra heads. See here we have a collection of reserve heads, and maybe when you go to the Egyptian Museum one day, you'll see large number of those reserve heads displayed in the museum, and they were in the different tombs, especially the tombs of Saqqara from the Old Kingdom. So it's very important to be recognized by your soul or your spirit, or your Ba, what we call the Ba. The soul in the ancient language is called Ba, and they also had a very important element for recognition in the afterlife, which is the double of any human being, sort of an invisible creature, will be watching over your life, and he will come back as an eyewitness in your judgment day to tell the gods that you are a good guy or a bad guy. So part of you, your car, is witnessing what you are doing in your first life, and he will tell the gods in the afterlife in your judgment day. Here you can see a quick comparison between the Egyptian art or the Egyptian statues and the Greek statues. And you see the result now. The Greek statue lost the heads. Yeah, because it's very weak part. The Greeks had sort of a beautiful style of art, but they didn't care about the afterlife. The Egyptians cared much about the afterlife. So you can see the statue is sort of like a solid piece of stone, yeah, attached. The arms are linked to the body. They don't leave any space. And from behind, they also supported the neck at the back of the statue as much as they could. Of course, they cannot make all the statues survive, but here you can see another good example. Here is the famous Pharaoh Ramesses II, the great Ramesses, and this statue actually is in Memphis, and Memphis is part of Greater Cairo. It's about 20 miles south of Giza pyramids, and the city of Memphis was the very first capital of the United Kingdom of Upper and Lower Egypt. When Egypt was divided into two countries, like 5000 BC, it took like 2000 years to be united. When it was united, the city of Memphis was established to be the capital of the United Kingdom of Upper and Lower Egypt. That lasted for a quite long time until they moved the capital further south and they established Luxor, or ancient Thebes. But the city of Memphis remained one of the main cities in Egypt even after building Luxor or Thebes, and it turned to be the base of the Egyptian army. So from there they would travel and join campaigns east or west or south or wherever. So this is where Ramses II was brought up, in the city of Memphis as a field marshal or as a general. So the statue here of Ramses II is very solid, as you can see. The features of the statue show that he's young and strong, and that was the common thing. All the pharaohs looked young and strong, handsome and good looking, very well built, the body and the muscles, and no matter how old the guy was. Ramses II lived until he was like 94. But we couldn't find even one single statue showing the king is getting old. So this is the maximum you can get, like 20s or 30s or something like this. It's always perfect, because this is the shape they wish to come back to. So they wouldn't show the person getting old or deformed body or ill or whatever. No, they want to have this perfect form for the afterlife. So no matter how old he was or how ugly he was even, and for the queens the same thing, beautiful, very well shaped bodies, nice dresses, beautiful wigs and beautiful makeup and so on, so they come back in the same form. While here you can see the Greek statue, again lost the arms and the head. So we can see why the ancient Egyptians insisted on making the statues that rough and tough, because they were always looking at the afterlife, not the first life. It's very important to know this, so you can understand the meaning why the statues were like blocks. This is a scene, a very important scene from the Book of the Dead, and we'll come to talk about the Book of the Dead shortly now. But I'm talking now about the Judgment Day. Part of the Egyptian mythology is what is known as the legend of Isis and Osiris. And I'm sure I will talk about the legend if you come and want us talking about ancient religion or religion in ancient Egypt. We'll talk about the legend of Isis and Osiris. But anyway, the legend of Isis and Osiris is the heart of the Egyptian mythology. If you understand the legend, you can understand a lot about ancient Egypt, because it's always talking about the beginning of creation, the birth of mankind. So that's Osiris here, the one seated upon the throne. Behind him, the two ladies, they were actually four children of the gods, two boys and two girls. So Osiris, the two girls were Isis and Nephthys, and the fourth one was a bad guy. His name was Seth, and he turned to be the god of evil, or the evil god. So it's not shown here. There's nothing to do with the god of evil in this scene. This is the scene wishing to go to the afterlife, to heaven. So the one who's in charge of judgment is God Osiris, who is seated here. Okay, now in front of Osiris we have Horus, the falcon-headed god, the hawk's head, and Horus was the son of Osiris and Isis. Whoever the king was a representative of Horus in this first life. So he's ruling the country upon the throne of Egypt in the name of Horus. When he's dead, he will become form of his father Osiris. And you can see that Osiris is sitting in the form of a mummy with the arms crossed. He's the first form of a mummy. So This is the deceased here, and he's been introduced by Horus to Osiris. As if Horus is telling his father that this guy was a good guy, and I've been watching him all his life, so I recommend him to go to heaven. Okay, his father Osiris wouldn't take his word for granted. He would have to check it himself. So you can see here, this god got Tot, and maybe you heard the name Tot before, King Tot, yeah? Well, actually we should call him not King Tot, we should call him Tutankhamun. Tut is the name of this god, the god of wisdom and writing. Ankh is the key of life, yeah? Ammon is the name of the local god of luck. So, Tot and Ammon, Tutankhamun, the short version, King Tot, yeah? Okay, so God Tot, the idol-driven God, is the one in charge of writing all what you do in your life. And he will come with all the records in the judgment day, watching over the weighing of the heart. Okay, here you can see the weighing of the heart. That's okay. Here is a little tiny feather. That feather was the feather of justice. It's a bird feather. And on the other side we have a little jar containing the heart, the human heart. So they said that if the heart is heavier than the feather of justice, so the guy was bad and he will be thrown in hell. If the heart is lighter than the feather of justice, you can see it's slightly lighter than the feather of justice, so this guy is a good guy, yeah, then he will be sent to heaven. Okay, here we can see a monster. This monster is ready to eat the heart if the heart is heavy and full of sin. And the one who is sitting the scale is God Anubis, the god of mummification, and the god of the holy progress, who is also introducing the king to God Osiris. Very interesting what you see here on the top of this beautiful scene. That's, by the way, on papyrus, and we used papyrus for writing about like 5,000 years ago. We grow papyrus in different forms, and we use them in making paper because they realized that it's very good material, it lasts for a very long time, and it is actually. It doesn't get really dry like any other material like sugar cane or banana skin, so it is sort of a soft and strong at the same time. So most of the documents came to us from the manuscript on papyrus. What we see here, in your court of law, you have the system which might be different from our system in Egypt. You have the judge and you have the juries as well. So these are the juries here. There are a number of local gods and the gods of the hereafter. They were attending the trial, they were attending the weighing of the heart to see if this guy was good and say he's guilty or not guilty, so he can go to heaven or to hell. So this is from the Book of the Dead, that we'll come to talk later about it as we talk about the development of writing as part of the art in ancient Egypt. At the beginning of the Egyptian civilization, they were building very primitive tombs, and they changed later to build pyramids, the famous pyramids. We'll talk about this tomorrow when we talk about evolution of construction. But when they were building pyramids like those of Giza, they had no time or a chance to decorate the inside of the pyramids, because it's quite hard work for them to build something like the pyramids of Giza. It takes like 20-25 years, and mostly the kings died before they finished, so there is no time to decorate the inside of the pyramids. But later, when they started building smaller pyramids, it didn't take that long time. They were not very good designed and not very well built and so on. So they had enough time to decorate the inside. And decorating the inside, what we call the pyramid text, they were like hieroglyphic text, as you can see, arranged in columns. And now you can see maybe better the letters. Some of the letters are like birds. They have the owl, they have the falcon. Owl is letter M, the falcon is letter A. They have the lion, which is letter L. And so they use very much similar way like in the cave carvings when they were carving animals and so on. So very much similar. This is a cartouche. The text has to include the name of the king. So the name is not written like the rest of the text, but it's always written in what we call a cartouche. Yeah? And I'll tell you a funny story about the cartouche. About 20 years ago, I watched a movie called The Mummy. You remember it? Yeah, The Mummy, or The Mummy Return, or The Return of the Mummy, or something. It's an American movie, and it's talking about discovering things in ancient Egypt or something like this. Anyway, it touched the subject of the scarabs, yeah, the scarab beetles, and it showed the scarab as something really horrible because it attacks humans, goes under the skin and eats flesh and so on. But matter of fact, this was not the case. You know, the scarab beetles were noticed by the ancient Egyptians like beautiful creatures. They had great love to all creatures, all different species, animals, birds, even insects, the bee or the scarab or name it. And they were watching the scarab was appearing usually early morning with the sunrise, and it disappears again with the sunset. So they thought that maybe the scarab beetle is creating himself on earth like the sun god or the solar disk is creating himself in the sky every morning. So they worship the scarab beetle, or they worship the god in the form of a scarab beetle, which is the form of the creator god. When you get any statue of a scarab beetle, ancient statue of scarab beetle, I'm sure that you have a great collection in the Metropolitan Museum, you turn it the other way around, you find the oval shape. So the oval shape, which is later on the form cartouche, is the back of the scarab. So they write down the name on the back of the scarab, which is like giving rebirth to the name. As the scarab is creating himself for the afterlife, so also the name will be created again or recreated again in the afterlife. So the pyramid texts were sort of a religious step. When you think about going to Egypt nowadays, what do you do after booking the trip and so on? You go and Google Egypt. Yeah, you get some information about Egypt from the internet, and you go to the bookstore and buy a guidebook. Yeah, and you go and ask your friends, been to Egypt. Yeah, what should we take with us? What is the weather like? You know, just try to gather information. So it's very important to gather information for the journey to the afterlife. Yeah, so they need some guidebooks because they won't remember everything, all the details. Those guidebooks were like sort of instructions, like guiding the way to the afterlife. Yeah, so that was mainly decorating the inside of some of the pyramids in Saqqara, which is quite close to Memphis, and it's again about 20 miles south of Giza, part of Greater Cairo nowadays. Later on, they realized that building a pyramid was not a very good idea. It's like leaving a landmark to the thieves who would come and dig here and there and find their way into the pyramids to steal the treasures. So he said that we have to hide the tombs. So they built just ordinary tombs, and they were hiding them in the mountains. That's towards what we call the Middle Kingdom. We had Old Kingdom when they were building pyramids, then we had Middle Kingdom when they were building just primitive tombs, but beautifully decorated from inside, and they were well hidden, and then they will move later on to build much more beautiful tombs in the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens. So when they were building the tombs in the Middle Kingdom, as they couldn't have the pyramid text, they developed this to have what is called the coffin text. The coffin text is decorating the casket, decorating the sarcophagus, and also decorating the coffins inside the sarcophagus. By the way, the only good example came to us from the tomb of Tutankhamun in Luxor, as we found inside the 4 gilt shrines, we found a stone sarcophagus